Whether you're advocating for Palestine, women's rights, or climate justice, social media can be a powerful tool to get your message out. But with so many worthy causes and limited attention, what creative strategies are activists using to keep the world thinking and talking about the issues that matter? I'm Myriam Francois, and this is The Stream.
You could not pay me enough money to shut up about Charli D'Amelio's white dress at Coachella. I'm so sorry. What I actually want to talk about is getting Abdul and his family to safety to escape this absolute massacre happening in Gaza.
I'm just talking about feminism. Don't bring race and LGBT into this. I'm just saying that your list of feminist icons isn't diverse.
There's lots of strategies people have collected through the years. You can find them in an article and in my bio here.
Look at that.
I'm an environmentalist. Of course I love to hug trees.
But many Black and brown communities don't have access to tree equity.
I'm gonna show you a makeup tutorial on how to create this beautiful eye makeup. And the first thing you're gonna do right now is you raise your voice and use your platform.
Alright, this is a video for all my pro watermelon creators out there and how to get around some of the crazy censorship that we've all been experiencing lately.
Change the spelling of Israel, Palestine, genocide, death, bombs.
We must go onto our social media platforms and raise as much noise as possible about what is happening.
Social media fatigue and desensitization are just some of the symptoms people experience as a result of consistent exposure to social justice causes online. With so much content demanding our attention, how do long-term activists ensure their followers stay connected to the struggle? And as censorship becomes increasingly prevalent, what strategies are people using to try and beat the algorithm? Joining us to explore this are Jenan Matari, a Palestinian American activist and storyteller, Mitzi Jonelle Tan, a climate justice activist from the Philippines, and Polanco, a digital creative and co-founder of Feminist on Instagram. Ladies, thank you so much for joining us today. Kai, can I start with you? You run a platform with literally millions of followers looking at feminist issues. How do you keep people engaged with a struggle which is neither new nor going away anytime soon?
I like to say that we are on a mission to meet people where they're at. When Feminist got started, we went from 1 million followers to 6 million followers entirely organically in 2020. And we asked ourselves, if this magazine was to exist today, where would it live? And it would probably be on Instagram. Today, we reach over 25 million global feminists around the world each month through our Instagram, our TikTok, our website, our newsletter, our zine, and our events. And we like to say that we're the global hub for intersectional feminism. We're amplifying the voices of the change makers who are at the forefront of the feminist movement. We're educating our audience to ultimately inform them and inspire them to take action.
And Jenan, your content, much of it relates to the Palestinian struggle. Do you find it hard to keep people engaged given how much of that content is just so distressing?
That's a great question. For me personally, I don't have a problem keeping people engaged because keeping Palestine a part of my daily conversation is just natural to me. So I have just organically found a way to make it a part of everything that I talk about. And Palestine is related to everything that any feminist or social justice activist is interested in. It's related to climate change. It's related to LGBTQ rights. It's related to race rights. And so it's just naturally a part of every conversation.
And Mitzi, climate change still resides, for some at least, in a somewhat contested space. How do you ensure you reach, content consumers who may not already be on board?
I think it's important to be really creative, and as what was said earlier, to meet people where they're at and create different kinds of content for people who are just starting to understand the issues, people who care more about other issues and seeing how it connects to climate justice. Personally, what I do a lot is actually bringing people who care about the climate and the environment to other social justice issues, such as feminist issues and conflicts and wars and genocide like Palestine. And I think it's important to understand that we need to bring all these circles together as well and show people how they're also interconnected.
Well, activists are increasingly critical of what they say is online censorship, whether through shadow bans, account suspensions, or problems with the algorithm. Could the solution be creating your own platform?
This is the one year we really need content about social impact to be seen. This is the year when nearly half of the world's population is going to vote in elections. And never before has mainstream media become more biased. Never before has social media been more censored. So if you are doing the very important work of educating people on social media about politics, climate change, healthcare, cost of living, and other social issues, now is your time to act. Number one, tell your followers ASAP to go to their profiles and allow political content on their feeds. If not, they won't even see your material. And number two, this is a reminder that we as organizers cannot forever rely on Instagram and TikTok to organize. We must create our own tools.
Jenan, you recently had your Instagram profile with over 300,000 followers suspended. I think you've since been reinstated. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, I lost my account access for 72 hours. I don't think it's to anyone's surprise that there is a very calculated effort to silence activist spaces, especially right now. Anybody speaking about Palestine, my page is dedicated to education and helping people unlearn what mainstream media has fed them for decades and what they were taught in schools. And so they're very much trying their best to remove our ability to connect with one another and create these communities that ultimately end up creating the change that we're all demanding.
And do you see it, Jenan, as a type of direct censorship? I mean, is that how you're experiencing it? Because you're not alone, right? Is this something that Palestinian creators often highlight?
Yeah, so within those 72 hours, this has been happening, since before October, but especially there's been a censorship crackdown since October of 2023. But in those 72 hours that my account was suspended, there were Palestinian creators who also lost their ability to collaborate. There was a collaboration feature where it helps amplify your message and connect with, the audience members of another creator. They lost their ability to go live. They lost their ability to interact with content, which pushes it outside of the algorithm. So, within those 72 hours, there was an invasion of Rafah. So it's hard to pretend like this isn't calculated and this isn't a larger effort and that the timing isn't purposeful.
Well, we contacted Meta for a response to these allegations, but we have yet to receive a response. Kai, have you experienced any sort of censorship on your side when it comes to feminist issues?
Absolutely. I don't think this is something that just suddenly happened. I think this has been a concerted effort for years. This directly impacts our right to accurate information, and also I think ultimately affects our health. It was in 2021 that we had raised, 2022, we had raised $50,000 in 24 hours for abortion rights when we heard that there was going to be, bans and all of that. And we did that directly through the platform. And then come the fall of Roe, we decided let's fundraise again. Let's get more money for our community and get, money in the hands for people who are seeking abortions. And Meta took away our ability to fundraise. And then it took 6 months for that ability to come back. I literally, emailed with the CEO of Instagram to try to get it back, and there was absolutely no answers. So ultimately what I think is finally maybe we're getting some answers that they don't want political content, but this is directly impacting our health and frankly, our human rights, honestly.
Mitzi, I want to ask you, do you think the issue is that activists are sort of relying on platforms that are run by, private interests, essentially, that are not necessarily aligned with the interests of your causes? And, is the solution just to try and migrate to other platforms? Or what do you think is the way to go to avoid these forms of censorship?
I think it's important to use social media as a tool. And unfortunately, if we create our own, that could be effective for building communities with people who already care, but then that will mean that we'd be leaving the people who don't necessarily who aren't tuned into the issues yet, completely just in a different circle. And so we need to be in these circles as well. And it's also about balancing that understanding that these are tools for us to bring people to organize. either through boycotting, either through physical protest, either through lobbying or whatever. But it is the starting point, and so we need to go where people are. And that means that unfortunately we have to play within the rules of the algorithm. But remember that we stay there, we get people, and then we bring them out of that algorithm space and then maintain that relationship and that communication there.
Well, you may have heard the expression, you can't pour from an empty cup. I spoke with psychologist Hala Alyan about social media fatigue and what she advises those suffering from it.
We need to release the archetype, sort of the Western archetype of the hero right now. This idea that there's going to be one person upon whose shoulders an entire movement hinges, that we are all in this thing together. And we need to like lean on each other. We need to turn to each other. And I think that's connected to this concept of rest being part of sustained action. And so if a person is feeling really overwhelmed or inundated, or being doxxed, or, is sort of the subject of threat or whatnot, in addition to reporting it, I think there's something in being willing to step back if you need to and care for yourself within community and within community care actions, and believing, like really trusting and really believing that there are other people that are going to continue to carry the movement, because it doesn't rely on any one of us. Thinking about what our capacity is, and then that sort of leads into the question of like, what replenishes your capacity? And again, that's going to be really like different depending on the person, but what are the ways that we can start to invoke care into our lives? And it's not care for the sake of care, it's really care kind of within the Audre Lorde model of care, in the sense that, we are calling upon care in order to replenish our systems, so that we may return to the things that really matter to us, so that we may take our attention back to the things that really, are aligned with our sort of value systems.
Jenan, we just heard Dr. Alyan there talking about the need to release the archetype of the hero. How do we do that?
You rely on your community. You build community, you nourish community. Liberation is never achieved by an individual. It is always a community effort. And I think in the context of colonization, which is largely what the conversation about Palestine has centered around, we have learned that part of a colonization tactic is to have people focus on just the individual, is to disconnect themselves from this idea of needing a community. And so when you're able to find that, you can take those rests that Hala was talking about, and know that your community is going to pick up if there's any slack there. You can tap people in, and you can give yourself that moment to recharge, and know that your community is going to keep pushing forward, so that when you're ready to come back, it's like you never missed a beat.
And Mitzi, how do you cultivate that real world community when so much organizing is happening online?
I think it's exactly as what Jenan said, that understanding that when we're bringing down systems of oppression, we're also simultaneously trying to build and recreate a better world. And so that means really living that both in person, but also online, and having spaces where you are safer, spaces where you can retreat to with people who will replenish you so that you can continue doing the work.
So what does replenishing your capacity look like for women in the feminist movement?
Ooh, I love this question. I think taking action. Studies show that taking action can reduce our anxiety and our overwhelm, and taking action can look like joining a local community board, having meaningful discussions, literally just stepping outside and joining a protest. Ultimately, what it does is it replenishes our capacity for optimism, and which can be really hard in times like this. But when we're out there and we're with, people doing things in the world, I think that it shows us that our community can really make meaningful impact.
So how do you sustain a struggle through time? It's a question activists have been asking forever. Check out this online conversation on exactly that.
In the West, people are probably familiar with this in different contexts. I've been organizing around this long enough to have seen multiple escalations and intensifications of genocide on Gaza specifically, and the same sort of, boom and bust activism where there's, an intensity of protests and activation like that, and then there's this collapse. It's like any sort of heightened visibility of a injustice that has always existed and long existed. There's always this spark of interest and then downturn and collapse. But I think it's something that actually says a lot about the day-to-day infrastructure of the West and like how people's lives are structured here, even in how they engage in relationships, right? Like it's like people will see each other every now and then to do something exceptional as opposed to like day-to-day just survival together.
And I think it also says something about the organization of the left and how successful like the neoliberalist concept conflict has been in crushing our organization and our community settings that can actually give rise to something more.
Exactly. Yeah. If you don't have those relationships, then it's like, well, you're not going to go to the event anymore, right? Like at some point, the event is going to get boring, whether said event is a protest or a direct action, you're not into it anymore. Because the thing that keeps us there, it's the relationships that keep people there.
Mitzi, do you recognize this boom and bust model of activism, and what strategies do you recommend to get around them?
I definitely think there are certain moments when it's more appealing to a certain crowd. Is what we need to do is to have different kinds of events that cater to different types of people and how they want to engage. And I think political education is also crucial and important so that they don't just get stuck at doing action, but not understanding doing it, that it's only just a moment in time for them to actually utilize. In our organization, the Philippines, we do different things. We go from schools, but also going to communities, but also sometimes just having meetings in the park and seeing what people are most comfortable with.
And Jenan, she also said in that clip, it's the relationships that keep us involved. And does that idea impact how you yourself curate your content?
Yes, I take my community that I've built online very seriously. I make a point to get to know the people that I am communicating with online, either in my personal life or develop personal relationships with them through these applications. And like I said before, it's important that you nourish those communities and those members because you guys are going to be in it together for a very long time. When people lose that personal aspect to a cause, that's when they tend to get disinterested. So for me personally, it's helped letting people into my life a little bit and to get to know me as a human being, because when they've learned to love me as a person and understand who I am as a person, it's almost like they've learned to love my cause for Palestine by default. And so it's like any friendship. You have to cater to it, you have to care for it, and you have to keep it strong and healthy.
So Kai, the feminist movement has sometimes been accused of ignoring the plight of some women over others. How do you ensure that you don't replicate that in activism online?
At Feminist, we like to say we're intersectional, we're international, and we're intergenerational. I think this is really important to take on this approach because we recognize that all our movements have to work together in order to receive collective liberation. How we do this is through, following the feminist framework of bell hooks, Dr. Kimberly Crenshaw, and the Combahee River Collective, by recognizing that multiple things can be true at once. I think in terms of someone's identity, somebody who in America is maybe a Black mother who is facing not only like the reproductive harm of like trying to be a mother in America, but also like a racist medical system. If they have a disability, that's another layered thing. And so our feminism very much serves to recognize all of someone's whole identity.
Well, when it comes to change, we all want it to happen fast, but that isn't always the case. Let's listen to this titan of the civil rights movement, Miss Angela Davis.
Change sometimes takes far longer than we could imagine. And I feel very privileged as a person who has managed to stay alive for a relatively long period of time, because I feel as if I am witnessing the fruits of the struggles of so many people who are no longer with us. And I like to convey that message to younger people today. Don't only think about what's happening now or next year or even 10 years from now. Imagine what might happen as a result of what you are doing in this moment in 50 years or 100 years.
Jenan, in light of the ongoing struggle of the Palestinian people, do you feel that social media has maybe distorted our sense of how quickly change should happen?
Definitely. I don't know that it's specifically a social media issue. I think we live in a society that is very, we have short memories. We need instant gratification. That's why these apps do so well, right? You're getting just flooded with information and images and videos all the time of things that just like instantly gratify you. But I think this generation of activists has done a very good job of understanding that this change is not, it's not going to be instant. It's not going to be immediate. I think in the context of things like Palestine and climate justice, everybody who is fighting for these two causes, which again are interconnected, I think we understand that a large portion of this fight is for future generations. Specifically when it comes to Palestine, there are so many people who have been in it for generations, who have fought for their future generations that they kind of know that they may not be around to see. And so I think if you're really in it, if you're really in the activist social justice change space, you understand that it's not an instantaneous change. And so, yeah, I think it's just reminding people of that on a daily basis.
Kai, much of the activism which preceded this generation wasn't online. How do you ensure a continuity in the movement which allows people to appreciate some of the wins which have come before?
Absolutely. I think that it's really important to recognize that this movement existed before us and it will hopefully continue to exist after us. And right now, we're just the stewards of all the work that incredible women in her story have done before. And what that requires is being in constant dialogue with people who've done this work, are doing this work, and are young people who could potentially be doing this work in the future. And so I think that's how we continue to recognize is like keeping community that's not only on screen, but very much off screen. Like just yesterday, I was talking to the founder of Feminist.com, Myriam, on the phone and asking her, like, you know, for answers.
Well, Mitzi, I want to ask you about optimism in the movement, because I think it's fair to say that climate change is one of those where it can sometimes feel like one step forward, two steps back. So how do you, cultivate a sense of optimism that keeps your followers, other activists engaged long term?
I think it's really important to do what you were saying earlier, to celebrate small victories along the way, realizing that the better world that we're building isn't necessarily a final destination, but forever a path and journey that we're taking. Really understanding that optimism and hope, it doesn't have to always be very light and friendly and lovable, but it's sometimes this thing that holds you on because you know that you need to have that hope, otherwise it's dead. For a lot of us, people in the margins, people most affected by the climate crisis, we are also the ones who are strongest, have the strongest hope because we have the worst to lose, and we know what it feels like. How communities have come together to really ensure that we survive and we thrive and we really get to live and enjoy life.
Well, I want to wrap the show by asking each of you to tell me a little bit about what drives you individually and keeps you going on the tough days, on the days where it doesn't feel like you're getting anywhere. How do you, dig deep? Where do you dig to find the power and the strength to go on? Jenan?
It seems like I've just been talking about community today, but that's it. When I feel myself losing any bit of hope or losing a bit of steam, I turn to my community and I find my strength and I find my inspiration in them. And I know that we're all going to find ways to continue pushing forward until liberation.
Mitzi?
It's exactly as Jenan was saying, it's community that's so important. And also what Professor Angela Davis was saying, where you also look at communities from the past and how time and time again, empires have fallen. Time and time again, we have won and we have achieved such great things, and we can do it again.
And Kai?
I think that this idea of like radical reimagination, that like if we can all be thinking it, has to be possible, and that optimism and I guess similar to everyone else, and the community is what keeps me going.
Well, on that note, it leaves me just to thank our guests. Thank you, Jenan, Mitzi, and Kai. And thank you all for watching. We love to hear from you. So if you have a conversation or a topic that you would like to flag for us, this is also your show. So let us know using the hashtag or the handle AJStream, and we'll look into it. Take care, and I'll see you soon.